It's 9:40 at night, the fan's on, got my retainer in, so my voice doesn't sound great, and I got this color screen. But I just want to talk about feeling nothing. I was watching this vlog where this guy like just mentioned he used to be addicted to like drugs and stuff like that, and how like years later the only thing he feels is love and the rest of it's just completely numb. And ever since my dad died, for the past like 4 years or so, it's really been the same way. I don't know if anyone else can relate to this. When the grief and when the sadness is so overwhelming, it feels like your body has to shut down emotion-wise in order to compensate for it. And the last few years, there hasn't really been anything for my body to quote-unquote turn back on to. So I just stay in this flat line where I'm feeling numb, feeling nothing. I wouldn't necessarily classify it as like being depressed or whatever. The given is the numbness. And so the only thing that I have felt in those years has been love. And for me, it was one of those one-sided deals where the other person didn't feel it. So it was just me, and it never truly amounted to much. And I could see what happened and it makes sense. But it's really tough to move on mentally and go through the process of focusing on the next part of life when this numbness kind of persists and kind of like permeates, especially when there's not anything else to think about. This part of my life, whatever you like to call it, chapter, we all have our own chapters of life. You're in a chapter of life, I'm in a chapter of life. This chapter of my life has been extremely hollow in a lot of ways, to the point where I think and reflect about life constantly. There's no good reason why at 9:40, after I've already brushed my teeth on a Wednesday night, I'm talking to a camera with a magenta screen thing. It's because there's just too much going on for me to just go to bed right now. I'm on my bed right now, and I couldn't fall asleep if I tried, because I'd be staying up thinking. And so I'm talking to you guys. But going through the process of numbness, the word numbness, it doesn't quite do it justice how intense, how much it changes life. It felt like just turning off all the lights. Instead of going through a life like where you can kind of see stuff and this and that, there's just nothing. So it's not necessarily like sad, but it's so much sadness that it's not even emotion. Like the emotions are not even available anymore because of the sadness is so much. So that in any circumstances when the emotion gets triggered, gets whatever, I don't know how else to say it but triggered, but when the emotion gets like flicked on, it's the most insane sadness for like a little period of time, and then you go right back to the numbness and it's gone. On the flip side, when it comes to like the positive stuff, like for love, when I felt love, it was like ridiculous. It was ridiculously good, even for someone that didn't reciprocate it, even in a situation where I saw my yoga teacher more than I saw them in the period of time, and yet she left an impact to the point where it's nearly like a year and a half, 2 years later from when that happened, and I'm talking about it at 9:40 at night on a Wednesday night, if that means anything. But circling back to the numbness and made all this stuff feel kind of indescribable, almost like something that I was waiting to end. I don't know how to say it. Something I knew was just going down. It felt vulnerable. It didn't feel like something that could last, or that whatever lasts, because of the life I've been accustomed to living for such amount of time, and it didn't. It really did. It kind of ended. It just wasn't a thing anymore. And then I went back to the numbness, went back to stuff. And don't get me wrong, like I got aspirations I'm chasing, got dreams I'm going after, but throughout this process, it's not like a thing like where there's ups and downs and this and that and whatever, and this is down, or this. It's just such a flat line where I find myself actively going my way to do things, or this, or listen to this song, or do this, or just to try and see if I can get that little spark or get that little piece that could get me back to where I'm feeling something without needing to have someone to fall in love with. That's kind of what this whole thing is for, is that it feels like anything short of true love or anything short of the dreams I'm trying to chase is going to end up with me just feeling the same way. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, for me, it helps push me and keep me going, keep me motivated, no matter what happens. But it's not something that I want to like pretend doesn't exist or just kind of hide away and just for years on end. Like I feel like it's good to talk about and get out of my system. The things I've gone through are not that crazy. There's people that have gone through much more difficult stuff, but it feels tough to find that sense of relation, that sense of connection with people after going through this specific circumstances, because they're so specific and they've had such a specific impact that it's tough for me to think of that connection. And that's why like the fall in love thing was such an alarming thing, because I felt something, I felt connection, felt all this stuff that I didn't think was gonna happen for another decade. So to have that, lose that, and then go back to it, it feels like there was like a filet mignon put in front of me and then taken away, and then they threw like some like frozen peas on the plate, and they're like, here, eat this, or whatever. Like, it's tough to explain the difference, but it was very big. And throughout the last few years, like I felt better about myself. Like I find more peace, I have more happiness. Like I'm genuinely feel good about who I am, and the anxiety, nerves, and all that stuff are not really a thing, thankfully, which helps when you're numb and all that stuff. But the numb feeling is not a feeling that you want to have. People talk about, oh, I'm numb, or oh, I want to be sad, or this, but I really don't think people want it for extended periods of time. Like maybe they want to feel really sad, listen to this song, all this stuff, and 100% understand. Like sometimes I'll listen to songs and feel sad and stuff like that. But to have it day after day, week after week, month after month, years after year, like if I didn't have faith and I didn't believe in God, I would go insane with this feeling, because the feeling is never ending. It's not like a thing, like even in my dreams, I have the feeling. Like it's not like a thing like where I detach or anything. Ever since not having that love in my life, like it's completely flatlined the entire day. It's tough, but it's a good tough. It's a good tough to where it's helped me. If I was comfortable, I wouldn't be doing as much as I was. I wouldn't be pushing myself. Like if I was happy, if I was, you know, if I was all this stuff, I wouldn't be pushing myself. It's in a sense still pushing me, so I understand it. But then again, I mean, you might as well still talk about something you're going through if it's tough. It's not like something that like, oh, I'm going through this and I understand the point of this, I'm just not gonna mention it. Like I'm gonna mention it and talk about it, but I understand that why it's happening. And for a lot of people out there, I'm sure anyone in a similar boat, if you're watching this, it's tough even if you believe it. It's tough to go through it. Like it's not necessarily like on anyone's bucket list, I would say, but to anyone who's going through anything, any difficulty, anything, any loneliness, any of this stuff, it's all about just taking it day by day and focusing. Like for me, the times I've struggled the most is when I've been overwhelmed with thinking about so many different things versus just pinning it down to just one thing and focusing on that, whether that's the hour, the minute, the day. Oh, I'm gonna eat this, oh, I'm gonna do this. Just focusing on that and being present within that helps it a ton. Especially after like experiencing stuff that's really good and not having that really good anymore, it can be a bit tough to just go through these days. If I wasn't in that daily mindset, if I wasn't focused, taking it day by day, and I just thought about what I had and stuff like that constantly, I don't know what I could say after this because it'd probably be a little dark, but I don't know how I could do it. So that's why I advocate for anyone who's going through anything to go through the steps and take each step one at a time. It's gonna be too overwhelming if you try to do it all at once. Because life gives you enough to go through the days, even if it may push you beyond what you think are your limits. It's when you start thinking about all different stuff that's not within the moment that it starts getting tricky and you start worrying and start having anxiety and all this stuff. Rewiring your brain to get it to just focus on the present really helps a ton and helped me a ton. So I hope this helped anyone out there watching. Hopefully you have a good day and night and all that stuff. And you can check out any of these videos, but God bless.